Hey everyone, and welcome back to Sasquatch Theory. On today's episode, I am doing a phone call interview with a guy from Minnesota. He wishes to remain anonymous, and I'm going to call him by his screen name, Thor. Thor and I met a few years ago after I had my encounters. We often kicked back states apart and talked about Bigfoot and the paranormal. He really helped me out through some tough times, and to my amazement, he is the same age as me and enjoys nature and the outdoors. I want to say thank you for being a good friend and for being on the channel. With all that being said, let's get straight into it.
I was born and raised in Minnesota, out in the rural part of the state, kind of farm country, between farm country and the North Woods. And lived here my whole life. I've always been into the outdoors, hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, the whole nine yards. If you do it outside, I enjoy it. And I'm just a pretty simple guy, blue collar worker my whole life. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so you're a pretty busy guy. Um, what kind of fish species do you guys have up there?
We got a handful. We got northern pike, walleye. We got bass. We got crappies, sunfish, and then the rough species like carp and big head buffalo and suckers and just the basics, you know.
Okay, so you guys pretty much have everything, just about.
Yeah.
A lot more than what we have here in Missouri. How far away are you from Canada, roughly?
Myself, I'm probably about 3.5 hours south of the Canadian border.
Okay, so roughly speaking, you're about central Minnesota.
Yep, central Minnesota. Just
Okay,
pretty almost the dead center of the state.
all right. Well, can you run us through your experiences out in the woods that you had and kind of tell us about the terrain, what you were doing, and kind of what unfolded?
All right. Well, this happened when I was about 26 years old. Um, and I had been going up north and hunting, camping, and fishing in the North Woods my whole life. And before this incident, I'd never had really anything happen to me and never gave the idea of Sasquatch a serious thought. Um, I kind of almost had a bit of a arrogance to me where if Bigfoot did get brought up, I felt like if it existed, I would know about it because of how much time I spent out there. And before this, yeah, nothing had ever happened. But this was early June of 2016, and myself, my girlfriend, and her family, we had gone up to Foothill State Forest to do about a 6-day trip of ATVing and camping. And we had gotten there on a Thursday, and we had camped, all throughout the weekend. And it was a pretty busy weekend up there. There was a lot of other campers and people four-wheeling. And just to kind of give an idea of the state forest, um, you're driving down like a county highway, and then you turn onto this forest road, and you drive a couple of miles into the forest. And along the way, on the left and right hand sides of the road, there'd be like just little spots for camping. Some were a little bit bigger where someone could pull an RV or a camper in there, and some of them were a little smaller, more set up for just tents. And these are all primitive sites. There's no electric hookup. There's no water. It's just an empty spot to pull into.
Mm.
And throughout the whole weekend, it was pretty busy. And then, like usual, Sunday night, most people clear out. And we were going to stay until Wednesday, so that we had a couple of days of the trails kind of ourselves. There's not a lot of people there on weekdays, just because most people work Monday through Friday, and we just had the ability to, stay there when other people weren't. So by the time Monday rolled around, there was nobody camping there, and I know this for a fact because the only spots that people are going to be four-wheeling and stuff, they're all along the road, and us riding up and down the road to go to the different trail systems and stuff. All those spots are empty. So, and we didn't run into anybody on the trails all day. We knew it was, empty state forest. And Monday night, when we were sitting around the fire, most of our group had gone to bed, and there's a few of us staying up late. That would have been myself, my girlfriend, her mother, and a family friend of ours that goes four-wheeling with us. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and, as the typical sounds of the woods you're hearing, we were hearing frogs and crickets, barred owls, and just normal critter sounds that you'd hear. And we're just relaxing, listening to that, just taking in the night, sitting around the fire. And all of a sudden, the whole woods just goes dead quiet. And frogs, crickets, everything just went silent. And it was just dead calm. There was no wind. And it was kind of like this eerie feeling for a couple of seconds. And then all of a sudden, the loudest, most insane sounding vocalization started sounding off probably about 100 yards to our east into the woods. And it was just, the volume to this was extremely loud. The power behind it was extremely powerful. And whatever it was had an incredibly strong and huge lung capacity. You could just feel it. And I had my Australian cattle dog with us camping, and he's trained to come out coyote hunting and stuff with me, and he's not afraid of anything. And instead of barking and trying to, scare whatever it was off, he crawled underneath my chair and laid his head down on the ground as if he didn't want anything to do with it. And this vocalization lasted about 30 seconds, if I were guessing. I didn't have a timer on it, but that was, to the best of my recollection, about how long this vocalization sustained. It was about 30 seconds. It was really long. And as soon as it stopped, everybody that was awake around the fire with me looked at me as if I was supposed to tell them what that was. And my girlfriend's mom even said, what was that? And I said, I have no idea. I've never heard that in my life. I have no idea what that is. And I had this feeling of dread come over me, and I honestly felt like crawling into my tent and hiding under my sleeping bag. And it was just a very strange fear that I had. I'd never experienced it before in my life. It felt very primal, like it was implanted in my DNA that whatever that was, that I'm supposed to fear it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was extremely strange. And then, I didn't want to shine my flashlight towards the trees or anything. Whatever it was, I didn't even want to see it. That's the type of fear that I had going through me.
What did the vocalization sound like to you? Could you compare it to anything else? Any creature?
No. And as a matter of fact, I went home and I went through the Minnesota DNR website and looked up a list of all the known birds, mammals, and critters of Minnesota, and tried listening to sound clips on the internet of their vocalizations, and I actually came up empty-handed. And if I were to
So,
describe how it sounded, it was like a howl, whooping, and just a long sustained vocalization. But that explanation, it doesn't really do it justice or make sense.
okay. Did it sound primate?
Yeah, it that was probably the only word that could maybe help describe it. Is it sounded very primate like. And my girlfriend's mom had even made a comment that it sounded like a symphony of space apes, because it sounded like one singular thing, but at the same time it sounded like 20 things in unison making this vocalization. It was very bizarre.
So, do you think there was a bunch of individuals up there making the vocalizations, and it wasn't just one?
No, my gut feeling is it was one. The sound came from one singular location, and just what my gut tells me is it was a one, but it had a very bizarre sound to it that made it sound like it was almost like a chorus.
Right. Did you have any prior knowledge of Bigfoot actually existing as a real creature before
No,
this? Okay.
no, not at all. I thought it was just a way for people to sell beef jerky. That was about it.
Okay. So what else happened after this? After you heard this vocalization?
Well, that evening, nothing had happened after that. It kind of went quiet. The sound kind of came back to the woods, and I had gone to bed. And even though I was so freaked out, I strangely was able to fall asleep pretty quick in my tent. And the next morning, we had woke up. The four of us that were awake kind of talked about it a bit, and everybody else that was camping with us while we were eating breakfast, they were kind of just rolling their eyes and like they thought we were making up a story, or we conspired to make up a story while they were all sleeping to just mess with them or something.
Right. Okay. So did anything else happen during that camping trip?
No,
Okay.
just four-wheeled a few more days and stuff. That was it, but it was on my mind a lot. And when I went home and I had some internet access, I kind of started obsessing over it and trying to figure out what it was. And at first I wasn't like thinking about Sasquatch that much. I was more trying to just narrow down what animal it was. But
Mm.
in the back of my mind, I kind of knew that whatever made that sound, it wasn't something normal, and it was way more powerful and louder than anything in the woods really should be.
Right. Okay. Um, do you have any more incidents that has happened since then?
Yeah. So kind of continuing on after that trip and stuff, and I did more and more research, and I started kind of realizing that there's something to the Sasquatch phenomenon that I just wasn't aware of, and most people aren't. And
Right.
I was actually kind of freaked out to go back there. And probably about 2 months later, we did. So it would have been in about late August or so. We did go four-wheeling there again, and it was the same kind of people that were with us. Me and my girlfriend, her family, all four-wheeling up there. And since we had been kind of looking on the internet at Sasquatch stuff and kind of wondering if that's what it was, I decided to take um, it was a chunk of birch that we had cut to use for firewood. It wasn't split or anything, so it was just about a 3-inch diameter chunk of birch. And I went up to a Norwegian pine and gave it a good crack on the side on a nice solid spot on the tree, and made like a little tree knock. And then we just kind of sat there and listened. And about a minute later, we had a knock in response, and it kind of made the hair on our arms kind of stand up. And then I was kind of at that, before that, I was at like 50-50 about Sasquatch. And then it kind of bumped me up to, okay, up another notch. Like, okay, like what the hell makes knocking sounds in response in the middle of the night out in the woods? And there, it just wasn't adding up to anything that I knew that was out there. And then
Right.
I I got kind of busy, and we never went up there again for a while. And there's a few times that the rest of the group did, but I was working, so I didn't go. And I hadn't gone up there in about 2.5, 3 years. And uh, myself and a couple of buddies from work decided to go up there just for a couple of days to ride four-wheelers ourselves. And I was kind of talking about, Sasquatch and stuff, and they didn't, they kind of just rolled their eyes at me, thought I was maybe just joking around, not taking me 100% seriously. But as we were four-wheeling around, we were on this, it's the most southern trail loop of this whole system. So if you take the forest road, like all the trails at this place, they kind of loop, out into the woods, and then they'll come back to the main forest road.
Mm.
And so we had gone as far south as you can go to hit this one kind of isolated loop, and it's kind of away from the other trails. So it doesn't get ridden a lot. I like that trail because it's kind of hilly, and there's kind of like a nice switchback on the back side of it that you got to go up a hill. But it just doesn't get hit much because you got to drive on your four-wheeler, a couple miles south on the road from the last, trail entrance, just to get down there to ride this, trail that kind of goes just a couple miles into the woods. So we drove down there, we started going through that loop, and my buddy stops. I was just paying attention to riding. I'm not even the one who spotted these right off the bat. And my buddy stops and he goes, "Look at all these like teepee structures out here." And I started looking around, and there's like not only these teepee structures, but there was, started noticing tree breaks and tree arches and stuff, where trees were kind of bent over like an arch and then pinned down in an unnatural way.
Mm.
And trees suspended, like woven through trees, like a 50-foot tree that's like woven through other trees and sitting perfectly, parallel with the ground, but up in the air about 3 feet or so. And it was just very strange. And then even my coworkers or my buddies that were with, they thought it was really weird too. But it was kind of getting low light at that time. So they're like, "Oh, maybe we should come back tomorrow and take a few pictures of these." So we headed back to camp at that point and got a fire going, ate some dinner, and maybe, I don't know, like a half hour after we got done eating dinner, we started hearing like little rocks, maybe an inch in diameter or so, land in camp, just outside the light of the fire. And then a few that were close enough where I was seeing them hit the ground and then kind of, roll off or bounce off. And it was weird. And my buddies are like, "Oh, what the hell is that?" I'm like, "Those are rocks." And they're like, "Oh, that's weird." I said, "Yeah, well, there's not an animal out here that can throw a rock at you." And we could hear them coming through parallel, like kind of hitting uh, the branches and twigs and stuff as it went through the trees and then kind of lobbed into our camp. And one of my buddies like, "Oh, it's got to be acorns falling, from the ground, or from the tree and hitting the ground." And I took out my flashlight and looked around, and there's nothing but maple trees around us. I'm like, "Yeah, maple trees aren't dropping acorns."
Right.
And it kind of just happened a few times, throughout the night or whatever. And that night, finally went to bed probably maybe around midnight or so. And I was sleeping in a hammock, and my buddy was sleeping in a hammock, and he was kind of, right on these two trees that are right on the edge of the lake. And as we're laying in bed, or hammocks, I should say, there's like some stomping going down in the water just down the shore from us. not that far away, maybe 20 yards down the shore.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking at first, I'm like, oh, there's beavers out. Because beavers will slap their tail real hard against the water. And, but usually they like do it once and then they kind of jart off and, swim away. But what we were hearing kind of sounded like the water cavitating. Like when you're a kid and you're at the beach and you stand in the shallow water and you stomp your foot in the water and you can see the water go away from your foot and then kind of cavitate and then splash back to your foot, cover your foot again. It was like this, but on a bigger scale, and it kept happening. It was bipedal. It was just one after another, these big stomps in the water. And my buddy over in his hammock is like, what is that? Like, I keep hearing that. And I said, I'm not 100% sure, but I can't figure it out. I wasn't trying to be the guy that was, oh, everything out here is, Bigfoot. And it was just it was real freaky. But I mean, that eventually stopped and we ended up getting some sleep. And the next day, we went four-wheeling again and we went back to that place and we kind of just slowly went through there and took pictures of the structures. And then we ended up having to leave after that.
Okay. What do you think the rock throwing was?
At this point, at the time, I was trying to, because, when you're out in the woods and it's nighttime, it's dark, it's real easy for your mind to get away from you. And you always want to try to remain calm. So you don't want to just jump to conclusions. So at the time while I was out there, I kept telling myself, like, oh, I'm just working myself up here. And I'm just trying to keep myself calm while I'm out there because it doesn't do you any good to panic while you're out there. And but now that that once I got home and actually thought about it for a bit, um, I would have to say I thought it was Sasquatch that was tossing rocks. There wasn't people. People aren't wandering around like the middle of nowhere in a huge state forest in the middle of the night. Um, just like they'd have to walk miles in because you can hear vehicles at night real easy. If they're a couple miles down the road, you can hear not only the engine but the tires crunching the gravel as they go.
Right. What do you think the rock throwing means, though? You think they're trying to
Um,
scare you out of the area, or do you just think they're letting you know they're watching you?
Almost, my gut feeling tells me they were messing with us to see if we would get scared and leave. Not necessarily like pushing it so we would leave, but messing with us to see like what kind of reaction they could get from us.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. What was the feeling you got when that happened?
Just kind of mind going a million miles a second, going, God, it's God, what is it? It can't all be Sasquatch. What are the chances? Because like this is only the second time that I've really started to experience stuff. There's the initial encounter with the loud vocalization, and then kind of like the little tree knock a couple years earlier, and then I hadn't gone up there in a while. And even before he's gone up there, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna have another Sasquatch encounter because people will be in the woods their whole lives and not have one. So the chances are that you have a second one in the same place you'd think would be really low.
Right. Right. Well, do you feel like they know who you are? I mean, have you been up there many times before? Like they've watched you?
Before the first incident, I don't think so. But after being up there and having every time I go there, something happens now. I'm inclined to believe that they know me. I'm kind of a creature of habit, so when I go there, I tend to like to go in the same spots.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, if they're intelligent, they're gonna recognize me or just know who I am, or even something maybe beyond that I don't understand. But I get the feeling that they're very aware that I'm aware of them, but at the same time, I don't really pose a threat. Um, I kind of go there, camp, pick it up after myself, and leave. And I think they just like messing with me or something.
Right.
Because a few months after, okay, so there was the vocalization a few years later, then we found the structures, had some rock throwing, and then we had the clomping going on in the water. And it was just like, okay, whatever. So the next early, or late spring, so it would have been in May after that fall, when that second experience happened, I brought my girlfriend with me and one of the same buddies from work that was with me there prior that fall. And I brought my woman up there because I wanted to show her the structures and stuff. And she wanted to see them. So we went up there and camped for just one night just so we could go look at these things. And as we start going through the area with these structures and we're taking pictures and videos of it and stuff, um, at first we were starting to see a few, and then you start seeing more and more the deeper in you go. And the feeling, the deeper and deeper you go in, is almost kind of like a foreboding type feeling. Like, maybe you shouldn't be goofing off back there.
Mm-hmm.
But as we got to the far back loop, uh, I'm taking video of a structure I'm seeing, and then I shut off my camera, and then I hear something hit the ground. Well, like, could have been a tree branch that just had fallen, like a bit of a rotten chunk fell off a tree or something. Not sure,
Right.
but it kind of put me on edge a bit. But as I started heading up the hill, my girlfriend was in front of me, probably about 20 yards in front of me. And then my buddy was kind of behind me and quartered at a 45-degree angle, kind of quartered behind me a bit and off to my right. I could kind of see him in my peripheral as we walked, but so that was to my right, and then on my left shoulder, I get pelted with a small rock or a pebble, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, it hit me enough, hard enough where, when you're a kid, somebody pelts a rock at you and it hits you, it doesn't really hurt you, but it stings, you feel it. And so I feel
Mm-hmm.
this, and it's on the opposite shoulder from what Buddy's walking by me from. But I, my instinct is turned to look at him, and I say, "Did you just throw something at me?" And he says, "No." And right as he says no, right behind us, this rock, probably the size of a cantaloupe or like a melon, smaller melon, uh, just comes flying in and then just lodges right in the dirt. Doesn't bounce, does nothing, just comes flying in, lodges itself right in the dirt. And at that point, I started, trying to get my phone out and I just start recording. But then, of course, I start recording and nothing else happens. So we continue along and we're taking more pictures and videos of things as we're going. We're kind of heading, we've kind of turned the corner. Now we're kind of heading back out of the woods and heading towards the forest road again. And every time I have my camera off, something happens. First time, we hear like the two whoops, just a whoop whoop. That was weird. It was loud, so it wasn't like faint, like, oh, what was that? We're on edge. Um, and then we kind of hear, we're going along again a few minutes later, then we start hearing stomping coming in. It's like it's in the thick underbrush off the side of the trail, from the same side of the trail, right hand side. And every time one of us has a camera or anything out, and then it kind of stops. And then the last thing that happened while we were back there is it was like a really deep guttural growl, and it was very audible, and it was extremely deep. It was way deeper than any bear can do. But at the same time, um, I just decided to treat it as if it was a bear, and I started kind of clapping and making noise to make sure if it was a bear, it knew we were there, and we wouldn't startle it or something. but I don't think it was. And just on our way out there, it kind of just sounded like something was paralleling us a little bit off to our right. And as we got within probably about a quarter mile of making it out of there and to the forest road, then it all seemed to stop. So almost as if we went into its area, we were taking pictures of its stuff on its boundary. It kind of felt like that was the boundary where if I went past them structures from the direction we came, that maybe we were going into their area, and then maybe something escorted us out to make sure that we had actually left, and that was it.
Oh wow. Yeah, that would definitely scare a person. Did it sound like maybe like a lion or a tiger? I'm not saying that they're there, but I'm just saying that capacity.
Like when a lion growls and they have that
Hmm.
real just deep, it almost sounds like the gurgle or bubbling of a growl is coming out like deep in their throat. I would say very similar to that, but even like more so like deep than what a tiger growl would sound like or a lion growl would.
Right. Yeah. Um, I was gonna ask you maybe some odd questions. I don't know. We've talked about this, just you and I, in the past, but do you think they have maybe special abilities like cloaking or mind speak, anything like that?
Um, I'm not opposed to the idea of it. There's a lot of strange things that go on in our universe here that I'm beginning to understand that we don't know everything. Um, the reason I feel that way is because every time I have these incidents happen, I get this weird sense of like an emotion imprinted on me that I don't experience at any other time in my life, never have in the past. Um, but just whether it's dread or even if I get a gut feeling that like, oh, they're just letting me know that they're here right now. I've never felt threatened like I needed to leave, but I've definitely felt the fear.
Hmm.
And it's really hard to explain or quantify, but it feels like it's an emotion that's imprinted into me from them. So in a way, I guess you could call that mind speak, even though they're not verbally talking in my head or something. They're putting some sort of emotion or information into me that kind of gives me the sense of I know what's going on here. I know what they're doing. And as
Right.
far as like cloaking and stuff goes, I've never seen a Sasquatch and then turn into, to dematerialize or whatever. But I do find it odd that every time, even in the, daylight when I've had rocks thrown at me, I see that big rock come flying in. I mean, how far can someone throw a round rock that's the size of a melon? Like, you and me could maybe toss that thing 10 feet. It's heavy and it's big and awkward to throw.
Right.
But whatever it was, I looked around everywhere, all up and down the hillsides and down into the valley, down to the swamp, and there was nothing around.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and my gut tells me that I mean, at this point, even though at first I wasn't sure what's going on here, my gut tells me at this point that what I'm dealing with are Sasquatches.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, do you think if you and I went back to camp in that area, do you think we'd experience some activity?
Um, I think we would if we weren't recording, because like what I was saying is every time I had the camera out and going, nothing would happen, and then I'd put it in my pocket, and I'm getting vocals happen and rocks tossed at me. It's as if they know. I think if we just went back there, just to camp and just go back there for maybe an experience and just have a good time back there, I think it would. I think if you go out there and you got this intention, you got all this gear with you to try to record or quantify something out there, I think it'll go dead on us. I've never
Right.
tried going out there. I mean, I've always respected them, or I just go, I'm just here to camp. I'm not going to try to prove your existence or anything to anyone. I mean, even though when we went back and took pictures and everything, all their structures, it wasn't really to try to prove it to the world or anything. It was just to kind of have them for ourselves.
Right. Okay. Um, yeah, I would really like to get up there maybe one day and maybe record and see what we can find. And like you said, go in there and just camp, see what happens, and maybe
Yeah,
just document our findings, see if we can find
ab-
more.
absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's about it. Do you have anything else to add as far as stories or any strange things happening, or is
Yeah,
that about
I've got one more story actually,
Oh,
and it's
awesome.
not
Perfect.
really it's not really 100% or anything, but it's just a strange experience. And it was in the same woods, but
Hmm.
this was just last year. Um, it would have been last fall. Me and my girlfriend, we decided that we were going to just take a little trip through northern Minnesota over a couple of days. It's like our first day, we drove up to like Duluth, Minnesota, and we went up the North Shore and stopped at a few, sightseeing places. And then we stayed in Finland State Forest that first night. Nothing happened there. And then the next day we had driven through the Superior National Forest and we went to Ely. We went and saw the Bear Center there. And then we drove kind of south and west through the Iron Range of Minnesota. And once we got out of the Iron Range, on our way heading home, we spent one more night and we decided to stop at Foothills State Forest. And this is the same forest all these other stories had come from. But unfortunately, it was a Saturday. So we got there and just started driving down the forest road. And we were going to take any empty site we could see because we knew that it was probably going to be busy. And we are like, anything we can, find, we're going to take. But we drove through um, and every single site was taken. There was even a few spots where people had gone, where logging crews had done clear cutting, and people were camping out in these clear cut areas and stuff. There's so many people out there. And we kept heading down the forest road, and this forest road goes, it goes like 20 miles deep into this woods, and it's bumpy and it's slow going. And we had gotten to the point where I had never even been that far back down this road before. And we're just like, there's got to be, maybe there's another little primitive site way back here that just I've never seen and never gone this far. And, we're already like 12 miles deep into the woods. And you know, we've never even been this far down this road before. But eventually, I don't know, probably about like 15 miles deep, we find this little primitive spot. It's not perfect. There wasn't a lot of level ground. We had to kind of set up our tent on like a slight incline and then, just sleep with our head uphill. And, I had to make a fire. There's rocks around. I had to make a fire ring and then I collected firewood and stuff. And we're just having a quick little, have a fire, eat some dinner, get some sleep, wake up, pack up, go home in the morning. So after we get done eating dinner, we're just relaxing by the fire for a bit. We keep hearing all these little, like scampering going on in the low brush and the weeds and
Hmm.
stuff. And it was like a pitter patter of like two little feet running around. And you'd hear one go, and then you'd hear another go, and it was like there was a bunch of little people running around, just outside of our camp in the weeds. And Um, after getting into researching, and looking into the Sasquatch stuff, you come across stories of little people and stuff too that are out in the woods, as well as Sasquatch. And My
Right.
girl kept asking, "What is that? What is that?" And I was like, "I don't know. That's kind of weird." I said, "Maybe it's the little people," kind of saying it half jokingly but half serious. And
Uh-huh.
a few minutes later, it kind of um, like we had our fire in a teepee formation, right? Classic teepee, campfire. And I got out of my seat to grab something to drink real quick. And then when I sat back down on the fire, there was a twig that was probably about 12 inches long. And it was like a perfectly straight, stick. And it was perfectly balanced on the very tip-top part of our teepee formation, like perfectly balanced on its center of gravity right there. And it was a fresh stick because the one end of it had just started kind of catching on fire, like it had just been put there. And I don't, and my girlfriend, she didn't realize, that had even happened or anything like that. Um, and she didn't do it. She doesn't mess with the fire or anything like that. But it was almost as if this had my back turned for 2 seconds, and then somehow this stick got perfectly balanced on our fire, and it was a bit of an eerie feeling because we were in there deep, um, and I was so tired from all the driving. I had hundreds and hundreds of miles of driving I had done the day before that I didn't want to have to pack up and leave in the middle of the night, and it was kind of spooky, kind of weird, but at the same time, no way of proving if that's actually what occurred or if I'm overthinking it. But the whole incident was very strange as well. And after that, nothing really happened. As soon as we crawled in our tent and laid down for the night, like it's as if they had gone away and just left us alone the rest of the night. We slept just fine, woke up, packed up, drove home, and that was it.
Right. Are there any stories about little people or gnomes in Minnesota? I guess I haven't really looked into it, or I've heard about it, but I haven't really researched it.
I mean, it's hard to find information on a lot of stuff in Minnesota. Even Bigfoot sightings, they happen a lot more than what is let on.
Right.
Like if you go to the BFRO, I think there's like 70 something reports from Minnesota. Well, that's not even close to a fraction of them. There's a lot more than that.
Right.
I've talked to
So
other
after
people.
you've had your interactions, you have found a bunch of stories, but they've been spread out like on podcasts and Spotify, YouTube, and internet websites. I'm
Yeah, but then
guessing.
also people I've talked to myself, where when they tell me their story, I've never heard it before. Um, and it's new to me, and there's nothing, never did a podcast or reported it to the BFRO or anything like that. So same thing with little people. I think the Native Americans all have stories about Sasquatches and little people and stuff here in Minnesota, but that's kind of just not, it's not like a thing where everybody really knows about that.
Right. So is it pretty hard to talk about Bigfoot in Minnesota, or are people pretty open to it?
I don't think people are very open to it. They'll kind of get a little chuckle, maybe a joke, but I think people that have had experiences, they don't really come out and say it either. Um, kind of like people here tend to keep their business to themselves and probably do fear ridicule or something like that. So they don't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add, or
No, that's all my stories that I have. Other than, there's stories that I've had that I've heard from people who've contacted me, and I'm always like interested, and because there's not a lot of information on Sasquatch in like Minnesota or like Upper Peninsula, Michigan, Wisconsin, or even Ontario and Manitoba. And there's a lot of wilderness and woods up here, and people don't realize like how much emptiness is up here.
right? Yeah, I believe it. Okay. Well, I appreciate you being on the show and taking the call and telling everybody your story.
I appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. And if you ever experience anything else, give me a call.
Absolutely. You'll be the first
All
to
right.
know.
All right, man. Well, thank you.
No, not a problem.
Yep. Take care.
You
Bye.
too.